Sophia John was underneath a school bus when the most important car in the district pulled up beside her. She did not know it was the most important car in the district. She knew she had 16 minutes before 32 children needed to board that bus, and she knew the fuel line had a crack that was going to make that impossible unless she addressed it in the next 4 minutes, and she knew that the tools she had were sufficient, and the position she was in was uncomfortable. And none of those 3 things were going to change, so she was working. Her legs were sticking out from under the front left side of the bus. Her hands were inside the engine compartment reaching for the fuel line with the specific focused precision of someone who had been taking engines apart and putting them back together since she was 14 years old in her father's garage in Port Harcourt, and who had never once in 12 years of doing this been intimidated by a mechanical problem that had a mechanical solution. This one had a mechanical solution. She had identified it in 40 seconds when the bus driver, Mr. Kwok, had flagged her down in the school parking lot, in a state of moderate panic, and she had crouched down to look at the undercarriage and seen the crack in the fuel line immediately, and had asked Mr. Kwok for the emergency toolkit from the back of the bus, and had gotten on the ground. She was the transport coordinator for the Hanul International School in the Mapo district of Seoul. She had been in this role for 11 months. The role, on paper, involved managing the scheduling and routing of the school's fleet of 4 buses, and liaising with the drivers and coordinating the morning and afternoon routes with the school administration. What the role involved in practice was everything that needed to be done to get 32 children to school and back home safely every day, which sometimes included scheduling and routing, and sometimes included being on the ground in a parking lot with a cracked fuel line and 16 minutes. She was 12 minutes into the repair when she heard the car. Not heard it in the way of background noise. Heard it in the way of something that had stopped very close to where she was, and whose engine had cut off with the specific quality of a high-end vehicle that she recognized as a high-end vehicle, even from under a bus by the sound of it. She registered it. She continued working. She had a fuel line to fix and 8 minutes left, and the presence of an expensive car in the school parking lot was not in the top 3 priorities of the current situation. She finished the repair in 6 minutes. She slid out from under the bus. She sat up on the tarmac. She was wearing her work clothes. Dark cargo trousers and a white technical shirt now with a considerable amount of engine grease on it, and her natural hair in a large natural afro that she had pulled back with a band at the start of the morning, and that had maintained its magnificent structure throughout the preceding 12 minutes of being under a bus, which she found privately satisfying. She was wiping her hands on the cloth from the toolkit when she looked up and found a man looking at her. He was standing beside a dark car approximately 3 meters away. He was, she assessed in the first second, approximately 30 years old. Korean. Wearing a very good dark suit with the kind of fit that communicated quality without announcing it. He had the sharp jawline and the dark, intelligent eyes, and the particular composed stillness of someone who was processing something unexpected and was doing the processing without letting it show, except that it was showing. Not in the obvious way. In the specific way of someone whose composure was entirely intact, except for one detail, which was that he had not moved since she had slid out from under the bus, and had not looked away since she had sat up on the tarmac and was looking at her with the specific expression of someone whose understanding of what they were about to encounter when they got out of their car had been completely revised by what they had actually encountered. She looked at him. He looked at her. She looked at the bus. She looked back at him. "The fuel line is fixed," she said. "If you need the bus." He blinked. It was the first movement he had made since she looked up. "I do not need the bus," he said. "Then the parking," she said. "Visitor spaces are at the north end. The bus bays need to stay clear for pickup in 20 minutes. She stood up from the tarmac with the easy movement of someone who spent significant portions of their professional life at various levels of proximity to the ground, and for whom standing up from a parking lot was simply the next step. She was 5'6" and she had the specific physical presence of someone whose confidence was not performed, but simply how they occupied space. She looked at him across the 3 meters. "Are you a parent?" she said. He looked at her. "I am here to meet the principal," he said. "The main office is through the blue doors," she said. "They will call her for you." "Thank you," he said. She picked up the toolkit. She walked back to the transport office. She did not look back. She washed her hands. She changed into the backup shirt she kept in the bottom drawer of her desk, because this was not the first time a morning had required a backup shirt, and it was not going to be the last. She called Mr. Kwak. "Bus is ready," she said. "Do the full check before you take them out and tell me tonight if there is anything else." Mr. Kwak said he would. She went to the morning briefing. She did not think about the man in the dark suit. She thought about him once, on the way to the briefing, in the specific involuntary way of someone noting a detail that did not require noting but had been noted anyway. She noted that she had noted it. She went to the briefing. Let's go back. Sofia John was 29 years old, Port Harcourt born, raised between Nigeria and Germany because her father Chidi John was a Nigerian petroleum engineer who had been posted to Hamburg when Sofia was 7 years old and who had raised his daughter between Port Harcourt and Hamburg with the specific combination of Nigerian warmth and German precision that produced a person who was genuinely excellent at most things she tried and who approached problems with the dual methodology of feeling them fully and fixing them completely. Her father had a garage, not a professional garage, a private garage attached to their Hamburg home where he worked on vehicles as the specific and complete relaxation of someone whose professional life involved highly complex systems and who found, in the particular satisfaction of a mechanical problem solved by hands and tools, a counterbalance to the abstract complexity of the workday. He had taken Sofia to the garage from the time she could reach the workbench. She had taken to it with the enthusiasm of someone finding their first language. By the time she was 14, she could diagnose an engine problem by sound. By the time she was 17, she could rebuild a gearbox. By 18, she had made the specific decision that mechanical engineering was the correct academic direction and that she was going to study it properly rather than simply do it well. She had studied mechanical engineering at RWTH Aachen University in Germany, one of the top engineering programs in Europe, and had graduated with the kind of degree that reflected someone who had been genuinely interested in the subject, rather than simply working toward the qualification. She had come to Seoul 3 years ago, not for the engineering work specifically, for a combination of things that had built up across her late 20s into the specific sense that Seoul was the correct next place. She had been fascinated by Korean culture since university, where a Korean classmate had introduced her to the city through conversation and food, and a particular quality of aesthetic precision that resonated with how Sofia moved through the world. She had arrived in Seoul with a 12-month plan that had become a 3-year stay because Seoul had done what certain cities did to certain people, which was get inside them in ways that made leaving feel like a reduction rather than a movement. The Hanul International School position had found her through the placement agency she had registered with in her 2nd month in Seoul. It was not the engineering position she had envisioned when she studied at Aachen. It was the position that matched her combination of mechanical knowledge and organizational ability, and that put her skills to use in a context she had not anticipated and had found, across 11 months, genuinely rewarding in the specific way of work that mattered to real people in concrete ways. 32 children got to school and home safely every day. She had arranged that. She was satisfied with it. The man in the dark suit turned out to be Junho. She learned this at the end of the school day when the principal, Dr. Yoon, called her into the main office and introduced them. Junho was the son of Han Sung-chul, the chairman of the Han Group. which was one of Seoul's most significant education and media conglomerates with interests in private schools, educational technology, and a growing portfolio of international school partnerships. The Han Group was in preliminary discussions with Hanul International School about a partnership that would bring the school into their international network. Junho was the Han Group's Director of International Partnerships. He was here for a 3-day assessment visit. Dr. Yoon introduced them across the main office conference table. Sofia manages our transport operations, Dr. Yoon said. She has been instrumental in restructuring the routing efficiency and driver coordination since she joined. Junho looked at her. She looked at him. He was the man from the parking lot. He was aware that she knew this. She was aware that he was aware. Neither of them addressed it. Ms. John, he said. Mr. Han, she said. The transport operations are part of the operational assessment, he said. I will need to review the routing documentation and the vehicle maintenance records. I can have them ready by tomorrow morning, she said. Tonight would be better, he said. She looked at him. Tonight, she said. I have a post-route debrief with the drivers and a maintenance check on bus 3 that has been scheduled for 2 weeks. I can have the documentation ready at 8 a.m. tomorrow. He looked at her with the dark, intelligent eyes. 8 a.m., he said. 8 a.m., she said. Dr. Yoon looked between them with the expression of someone who was reading something in the exchange and filing it for later consideration. 8 a.m. is fine, Dr. Yoon said. Sofia went back to her office. She did the post-route debrief. She did the maintenance check on bus 3, which revealed a minor issue with the brake pads that she documented and scheduled for professional repair the following week. She prepared the routing documentation and maintenance records for 8 a.m. with the thoroughness she brought to everything. She was thorough because thoroughness was how she worked. Not for the assessment, not for Han Junho, because it was correct. She sent the documentation to his email at 7:58 a.m. At 8:02, she received a response. It said, "This is the most comprehensive transport documentation I have encountered in 4 years of school operational assessments." She looked at the email. She typed back. The documentation reflects the operations. The operations are comprehensive because children are comprehensive. She sent it. She went to the morning briefing. At 10 a.m., he appeared at the door of her transport office. She was at her desk with the week's routing adjustments open on her screen. "The email," he said. "Yes," she said. "Children are comprehensive," he said. "They are," she said. "They have unpredictable schedules and varied needs, and parents with competing requirements and traffic conditions that change daily. Comprehensiveness is not a choice in transport operations that involve children. It is a requirement." He looked at her. "May I sit?" he said. She gestured to the chair across the desk. He sat. "Yesterday morning," he said. "In the parking lot." "Yes," she said. "The fuel line," he said. "Cracked," she said. "Visible on the 3rd inspection point of the undercarriage. Fixable with the emergency kit. 32 children needed the bus in 16 minutes. "You fixed it yourself," he said. "The repair was within my technical capability," she said. "Waiting for external service would have taken 40 minutes minimum." The math was clear. He looked at her with the dark, intelligent eyes that she was now observing at close range in the transport office morning light, and that were, she was noting with the specific involuntary quality of the noting that had happened in the parking lot. More interesting at close range than they had been at 3 meters. "Where did you learn?" he said. "The mechanical knowledge." "My father's garage," she said. "Hamburg. I have been working on engines since I was 14 years old." "You are a mechanical engineer," he said. "By training," she said. "RWTH Aachen." He looked at her. "You are a mechanical engineer from one of the top engineering programs in Europe," he said, "coordinating school bus routes in Mapo." She looked at him. I am a mechanical engineer from one of the top engineering programs in Europe who coordinates school bus routes in Mapo, she said. Those two things are not in contradiction. The work is real. The children are real. The engineering is applied daily in a context that matters. I did not mean it as a criticism, he said. I know, she said. Most people do not mean it as a criticism. They mean it as a question. The question is, why are you here instead of somewhere more visible? The answer is that visible is not the measure I use. He was quiet for a moment. What measure do you use? He said. Whether the work matters to the people it affects, she said, and whether I am the correct person to do it. He looked at her across the transport office desk. And you are, he said. I am, she said. 32 children have arrived at school and returned home safely every day for 11 months. The routes are more efficient than they were. The maintenance is proactive rather than reactive. The drivers have a consistent contact and a clear system. The work matters, and I am the correct person to do it. He looked at her for a long moment. The Han Group is considering bringing Hanul into its international network, he said. Part of that consideration involves the operational standards of the school. I know, she said. The transport operations specifically, he said, are among the strongest I have assessed in this region. They should be, she said. I designed them. The corner of his mouth. The first time. She noted it and continued. The assessment, she said. What else do you need from my department? He looked at the routing schedule on the screen behind her. Walk me through the routing methodology, he said. How you built it. She turned the screen toward him. She walked him through it. It took 45 minutes. He asked 7 questions. Every question was the correct question. The kind that came from someone who had read the documentation properly and had identified the decisions rather than the descriptions. She answered every question precisely and without simplification because he did not need simplification. At the end of the 45 minutes, he looked at her with the expression of someone who has been doing something they expected to be routine and has found it to be significantly more than routine. Ms. John, he said. Yes. This methodology, he said. The dynamic routing adjustment system you built. The real-time integration with the driver communication protocol. This is not standard transport coordination. No, she said. It is engineering applied to a transport problem. It is significantly more sophisticated than the systems used by most schools in this network, he said. I built what the situation required, she said. The situation required something sophisticated. He looked at her. I would like to propose something, he said. Propose it, she said. The Han Group is developing a transport safety and efficiency framework for its international school network, he said. 42 schools across 8 countries. The framework needs a technical architect. Someone who understands both the engineering principles and the operational context of school transport. Someone who can design a system that scales across 42 schools without losing the specificity that makes a system actually work. She looked at him. You are offering me a position, she said. I am proposing a conversation about one, he said. Based on 45 minutes and a fuel line repair, she said. Based on the most comprehensive transport documentation I have seen in 4 years, he said, and a routing methodology that is sophisticated enough to be applied at network scale, and a person who said the operations are comprehensive because children are comprehensive. She looked at the screen. She looked at him. I have 32 children who need their routes covered, she said. I am not going anywhere in the middle of an academic year. The conversation does not require you to go anywhere, he said. It requires you to have dinner with me on Friday and tell me more about how you built this. She looked at him. That is a specific pivot, she said. The methodology conversation requires adequate time, he said. Dinner provides adequate time. Junho, see? She said. Yes. The methodology conversation, she said, could happen here in this office in 2 additional sessions. It could, he said, but Friday dinner in Yongsan at a restaurant I know has significantly better food than the Hanul International School Transport Office. She looked at him. The corner of his mouth. The full version this time. She had been noting it since the parking lot. She was still noting it. Friday, she said. After 6. I have a route debrief at 5:30. 6:30, he said. I will meet you there, she said. Send me the address. You do not require collection, he said. She looked at him. You spoke to Catherine, she said. He looked at her. I do not know a Catherine, he said. She looked at him for a moment. Then you just understood me correctly, she said. He stood up. He picked up his notebook. The assessment continues tomorrow, he said. I will be here, she said. He walked to the transport office door. He turned back. Ms. John, he said. Yes. The fuel line repair, he said. How did you know the crack was in the 3rd inspection point? The sound of the fuel pressure, she said. Uneven draw on a cold start. 3rd point is the most common site for thermal stress cracks in that bus model. He looked at her. By sound, he said. By sound, she said. He turned and walked out. She turned back to her screen. She sat for 3 seconds. She picked up her phone and she called her best friend Adaise in London. Adaise, she said. What happened? Adaise said. You only call at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday when something happened. A man just asked me to dinner to discuss routing methodology. That sentence has a lot going on in it, Adaise said. He is the son of a Korean conglomerate chairman, Sofia said. He is here to assess whether the school joins the Han Group's international network. He saw me fix a fuel line in the parking lot yesterday morning. You fixed a fuel line. Cracked 3rd inspection point, Sofia said. Thermal stress. Sofia? Yes. He saw you on the ground fixing a bus and then asked you to dinner. He called it a methodology conversation, Sofia said. And you said yes. I said Friday after 6. Sofia Chidi John, Adaise said. I know, Sofia said. You told him you do not require collection. I did not tell him that specifically, Sofia said. I told him to send me the address. Same energy, Adaise said. Different sentence. Sofia did not respond to this. What does he look like? Adaise said. Sofia looked at the transport office door. He has very good eyes, she said. Good eyes, Adaise said. Dark, intelligent. They show the thinking rather than manage it. Sofia. It is an observation, she said. You observed his eyes while you were telling him you do not require collection. I observe everything, Sofia said. It is how I diagnose engine problems. You diagnosed his eyes like an engine problem. Adaise. I will be here Friday evening, Adaise said. For the debrief. Have the dinner first. Sofia hung up. She looked at the routing schedule on her screen. She thought about 42 schools across 8 countries and a transport framework, and someone who asked the correct questions and whose eyes showed the thinking rather than managed it. She thought about 32 children and 11 months and a backup shirt in the bottom drawer. She thought about visible not being the measure she used. She thought about whether the conversation was only about methodology. She concluded it was not. She went back to work. Friday came. The restaurant in Yongsan was exactly what the address had suggested from the moment she looked it up. Small, specific, the kind of place that communicated quality through its attention to the details rather than its size. She arrived at 6:32. He was already there. He stood when she came in. She noted this. She was wearing a deep emerald green wrap dress that was her specific version of the dress that communicated that she was not at the transport office while also communicating that she was not someone who was trying to be anyone other than exactly herself. Her natural hair was down in its full natural afro, magnificent and unheld by any pin or band, the version of herself she kept for evenings when the day was done and nothing needed to be practically managed. He looked at her the way he had looked at her in the parking lot, not performing the looking, actually doing it. "You look," he started. "Different from the parking lot," she said. "Less grease. The full corner of the mouth. Different from the parking lot," he agreed. They sat. They ordered. He had, as he had said, excellent taste in restaurants. They talked. The methodology conversation lasted approximately 40 minutes and was genuine and substantive, and covered the routing architecture and the real-time adjustment protocol and the driver communication framework and the specific design decisions that had made the system what it was. Then the conversation moved. She told him about Port Harcourt and the garage and her father Chidi, who had given her the specific language of mechanics as a child and who had raised her with the understanding that understanding how things worked was both a practical skill and a philosophy. She told him about Hamburg and Aachen and the specific precision of German engineering education that had given her formal structure for instincts she had already had. He told her about growing up as the son of a conglomerate chairman in the specific experience of being simultaneously visible and expected, and privately uncertain about which parts of what he was building were genuinely his, and which parts were the architecture he had been placed inside. "The education network," she said. "The international partnerships work. Is it yours?" "What do you mean?" he said. "Is it the work you chose? Or the work you were placed in?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. "Both," he said. "Initially placed. Genuinely chose, over time. I found that the work mattered to me when I saw what it did for the schools. The children in those schools. That is the correct order," she said. "You cannot know if work is yours until you have done it long enough to see what it produces." "Is that how it was with the school?" he said. "The transport operations." "I did not expect to find it meaningful," she said. "I found it meaningful because of what it produced. 32 children, 11 months, safe." He looked at her. "You keep coming back to that number," he said. "It is the measure," she said. "Everything else is methodology." He looked at her across the dinner table in Yongsan, with the dark, intelligent eyes that showed their thinking, and she looked back with the specific attention of someone who had been paying the right kind of attention since the parking lot. "Sofia," he said. "The first time without the Miss Junho, she said. "The framework," he said, "for the 42 schools. I meant it. I want you to build it." "I know you meant it," she said. "I want to hear more about what 42 schools means for 32 children who need their roots covered." "It means the 32 get the same system quality as every child in the network," he said. "It means the methodology you built in one school becomes the standard that protects children in 42. She sat with this. She thought about her father in the Hamburg garage. She thought about the third inspection point and the sound of the fuel pressure and the 16 minutes. She thought about visible not being the measure and whether what she had just heard changed what visible meant. "I will think about it," she said. "That is not a no," he said. "It is not," she said. "It is an engineer doing due diligence before committing to a structure." The corner of the mouth. The full, complete version of it. She had been noting it all evening. She was noting it now with full acknowledgement that it was no longer filed under professional observation. "Junho, she said. "Yes." "The parking lot," she said. "When you got out of the car. You did not move for quite a long time." He looked at her. "No," he said. "Why?" He looked at her across the Yongsan dinner table. "Because I came to that parking lot expecting to walk into a school," he said. "And I walked into a woman lying under a bus fixing a fuel line by the sound of the pressure draw. And I had never encountered that before, and I found that I did not want to look away." She looked at him. "Han Junho, she said. Yes. I am going to need time, she said, for the framework decision and for the other conversation. I know, he said. I move deliberately, she said. When I commit to a structure, I commit completely. That requires time and correct information. I have time, he said. I am also thorough. I know, she said. You asked the correct 7 questions. You noticed, he said. I notice everything, she said. It is how I diagnose engine problems. He looked at her for a long moment. Sofia, he said. Yes. The 3rd inspection point, he said. You said it is the most common site for thermal stress cracks in that bus model. Yes, she said. How many bus models can you identify by the sound of the fuel pressure draw? He said. She looked at him. She thought about this. 14, she said. Possibly 15. The newer hybrid models have a different pressure signature that I am still calibrating. He looked at her. Junho, he said. Seriously. Junho, she said back. Outside the Yongsan restaurant, the Seoul Friday evening was being exactly what Seoul Friday evenings were. Warm and specific, and full of the particular energy of a city that moved at the pace that suited people who had somewhere to be and something to build. She had somewhere to be. She had something to build. Both of those things had, as of this evening, acquired an additional dimension she had not scheduled. She was a mechanical engineer. She understood that the best structures were not the ones built fastest, but the ones built with the correct materials applied to the correct problem in the correct order. She had time. She was paying attention. Drop a comment right now and type, she diagnosed it by the sound and he never recovered. Because Sofia John fixed a fuel line by the sound of the pressure draw on a cold start, and Junho got out of a very expensive car and did not move for a very long time, and by Friday evening she was telling him about 14, possibly 15 bus models, and he said Junho and meant everything else simultaneously, and it was always going to end exactly like this. Tell me your moment. Was it the legs sticking out from under the bus? Was it children are comprehensive? Was it visible is not the measure I use? Was it the correct 7 questions? Was it 14, possibly 15 hybrid models still calibrating? Was it I do not want to look away? Was it I move deliberately when I commit to a structure I commit completely? Was it Junho said back with everything else in it? Tell me everything. And if you are here because Afro's Storyverse builds the stories where African women show up completely themselves, and that is the most extraordinary thing in any room, subscribe, hit the bell, every notification, every week. More characters, more garages, more fuel lines fixed by sound. Annyeong, my loves.